Hello there and welcome to Photoshop Basics. I'm your instructor Dan Hood, and today we are going to take a look at Adobe Photoshop's Adobe Photoshop Elements and how it differs a little bit from Adobe Photoshop, mostly in the workspace and how it's set up, but a lot of the tools and things like that are the same. But we're going to take a quick look at Adobe Photoshop Elements, and what we're really going to be talking about mostly in this lesson is about adjustments to color, contrast, and how to apply them to your images. So the first thing we'll do is let's go to File, Open, and you will find that in a very similar place that you would find it in Adobe Photoshop. So we'll go to Open, and we'll open some of the images I've used previously. We'll start with the cowboy image. So this is the cowboy image, and as you can see, just like Photoshop, the file when it opens gives you a lot of information right off the top. As you can see right here, you can see the zoom level right here. Right here you can see the size and the resolution of your image. This image is 4 by 5 inches and is at 300 ppi resolution. And up here you can see the name of it and what file format it is saved in, and that is a JPEG, and it is in the RGB color mode. So that gives you the standard basic information right there. And then we'll come over here to our workspace, and you'll see the different modes that you can be in. Right now we're in edit mode, so that means that we can do any kind of adjustments or use our tools. So the first thing let's take a look at our layers palette, which is always located by default down in the lower right hand portion of your workspace, and there is our background layer. So the first thing we're going to do, that I like to always do when making any kind of adjustments to an image, is that I always like to duplicate my layer. And the reason I like to do that is because if I get into a very complicated adjustment of the image, in case for something goes wrong or I don't like the adjustments that I made, I always have a backup layer to go back to. So anyway, we have our copy of our background layer now, and we are going to do adjustments on that layer. As you can see, that right now, as soon as you make the copy of your adjustment layer, or you have a new layer that has any kind of image placed into the layer, in Photoshop Elements, it automatically brings up the edit box. And so what that does is it tells you that you're ready to edit right away. And what you can simply do quickly with the edit box is that you can grab one of the boxes at the edge, and you can do a transformation on it right away, say like a scaling, as you can see. And I'm scaling the background copy, and then there is my original copy still, as you can see. If I were to finish making adjustments on that one, and I turn this off, you would see that I'm still in the background copy. Anyway, that's just a little side note telling you that you're already in the edit mode. But so let's take this back to how we started, and let's go to revert. That will take us back to the very beginning. And as you can see, I'm back to one layer, and it has taken me back all the way to the point where I opened my document. So let's go ahead, and I'll duplicate that layer again, and I'm going to turn this first layer off. Now I'm going to start making my adjustments. To do adjustments, say as color and contrast and that kind of thing, you'll want to click here onto the Quick tab. And that, as you can see, that brings up all of your different adjustments that involved lighting, color, sharpness, those kind of adjustments that come with color and shadows, being able to control your shadows and your highlights. So if I were to just take one of these sliders, say under the lighting palette, and just move them up and down, you can see how the adjustments are made. That's the shadows. I'm adjusting the shadows, and as you can see, anything that's really dark all of a sudden is becoming light as I move the slider up. The same thing with the midtones. If I lower the midtones, they kind of wash out. If I bring them up, they almost get darker. And the same with the highlights. If I bring it up, everything gets darker and darker. Now here you have saturation and hue. Saturation basically is just what it says, is the saturation of the colors in your image. So if I were to pull it all the way up to the top, you can see that all of the colors that are involved in the image become ultra saturated. And obviously that's not what you want. Now if you go the opposite direction, as you see, all the color starts to fade, 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 and actually you get a black and white photograph. That is one way to achieve a black and white photograph, and actually probably a better way than simply turning it to a grayscale image. And the reason is because that you still maintain the RGB values. Now next you have hue, which what that does is that controls the rendition of the colors that are shown. Like right now you have realistic colors being represented, like the green of his eyes and the flesh tones of his skin and the black of his hat. But if I were to move the hue in different directions, as you can see, that the representative colors change. Now as you can see right here, you have a check mark and an X. If I'm to click the check mark, that is going to make my adjustments permanent. But if I go with the X, then that releases them and resets the colors back to how they were. So that's a nice little tip there for you. A check will accept your changes and an X will reset your changes. Now the last thing I want to show you is that some of these adjustments have an auto button right there. There's an auto button for color. And to be quite honest, even as a professional designer, I use the auto button quite often because Photoshop and Photoshop Elements have gotten to a point after many generations of the software that is actually quite intelligent and really does an excellent job of doing auto adjustments to your images to make them look better. Now the Smart Fix is actually a really nice tool in Photoshop Elements because it really is kind of like a one-stop shop auto correction tool that will correct everything from color to shadows to highlights to contrast. So my advice would be that when you open up an image and the first thing you do is to start to adjust the colors, try the Smart Fix, the Auto Smart Fix first, and see if you click it, let it do its thing, and see if it gives you the results that you're looking for. And 8 out of 10 times it probably will. So anyway, I'll show you what it does. Let's click the auto button. In this case, it really didn't change my photo a lot because the photo that I had to begin with really didn't need a lot of adjustments. Now, the one thing that I will say is that I think it took a little bit of the red out of his skin, and I think it actually looks better. So it was a very subtle fix, but it indeed did fix it somewhat. Now, as you can see, there's auto levels for your lighting too. So let's go ahead and click those two, and it seems like that it brightened it up ever so slightly. And contrast didn't do a lot because the levels already took care of it. So anyway, as you can see, that these auto level buttons are really actually very useful, and like I said, 8 out of 10 times it'll get the job done for you without having to do very many manual adjustments. And that's a sharpness auto button. Actually, probably a little too sharp. Sometimes it can actually do a little bit of damage to your photos because it's trying to guess what you want. Another thing to remember is anytime you're working on any kind of photo or anything, the Control Z on a PC or Command Z on a Mac, or in this case the undo button, will become your best friend. Anytime you want to change something, you want to go back one step, you can always click that. In Photoshop Elements, the same buttons are also in the upper right hand corner. Makes them very easy to get to. So anyway, let's reset. There's a big reset button here in your adjustments right here, and if you reset everything, it takes it back to the original image. Now quickly, I'm going to just show you how you can manually control your adjustments. Here I'm going to bring up the shadow a little bit. I'm going to lower the midtones to lighten it up. But now I'm going to bring down the highlights. So that's how you would do a manual adjustment. Now the last thing that I'm going to show you in this lesson is adjustment layers. And the differences between adjustment and adjustment layers is that it's very similar to what I was just doing when I would duplicate a layer. Now if you go back to the full button, it takes you back to your layers mode. And here again, you can see the layers again. So I'm going to throw this a layer away, and I'm just going to work on my background. Actually, that's not true. I'm going to have to make a duplicate and make a new layer because I cannot work on the background layer because it is locked and it'll always be locked. So I've made a background copy again. This time I'm going to apply an adjustment layer to it. Down here in your layers palette, it's like a black and white half circle. And if you click that, it says create new fill or adjustment layer. So I'm going to apply an adjustment layer to my duplicated layer. Now there's different types of adjustment layers as you can see here. You can just apply a solid color to it, a gradient, a pattern. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click levels. And what that does is that changes my layers and brings up the adjustments. And as you can see here, this is a histogram. And what that means is that this is just showing you graphically where your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights play out in your image. As you can see in this one, there's a lot of dark or a lot of shadows, and that would make sense because there's a lot of black in this photo. Not so much highlights and not so much midtones, so just a lot of black. But what you can do here is that you can adjust these layers. You can do an adjustment to your layer, and that's why they call it a layer adjustment. So if I am to play around with this manually, and I just applied a adjustment to that layer. Now if I click back on layers, let's pull that up so I can see it better. There we go. Now we are back. And as you can see, it gives you this, it produces a new layer that has sprockets in it. And what that is telling you is that this is an adjustment layer and it is being applied to the layer that is directly below it. Now see, as you can see, if I were to turn this off, where you can turn off the visualization of layers, if I'm going to turn that off, then it turns off the adjustments that I just made, and it goes back to kind of a the original image we had. So that's why I was saying it's very similar to duplicating a layer and doing your adjustment on that, because that's very similar to what you're doing. And if I were to throw that adjustment layer away, then I would be back to my original image unadulterated. So that is a short lesson about layers, how to adjust them, and applying an adjustment layer to your layers. Thanks for watching.